The Pittsburgh Steelers are really going to have a whole new look on offense in 2024. No Kenny Pickett, no Deontay Johnson, no Allen Robinson, no Alfonzo Graham, no Mason Rudolph. No, wait, Alfonzo Graham? Who the heck is he? Welcome, everybody, to JJ9 News, where we talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared Gare, and I'm representing the 904 from the 602. And today, we are talking about this team behind me right here, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and a move that they made on Thursday that I want to talk about, not necessarily because the player in question got cut, but because it could impact how they have their roster structured for the 2024 season when it comes to the 90-man roster, and maybe even the 53-man roster, because things just got a little more interesting in Pittsburgh with that running back depth chart. Alfonzo Graham, an undrafted free agent out of Morgan State last season, is no longer with the team. He was just cut. He led the MEAC with 1,150 yards as a senior in 2022 with 8 rushing touchdowns. He signed with Pittsburgh on a rookie tryout contract, not even as a high-priority undrafted free agent. Had to try out on the team. He impressed a lot. He had a nice catch during the offseason, looked promising, but then he tore his labrum in training camp, spent the year on IR, never got a chance to do anything, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are cutting ties with him. He will not be back with the team in 2024, so he will have to find work elsewhere. I don't know where he's going to end up. He had no top 30 visits with any teams in 2023. There's no teams I could find who were interested in him, which is unsurprising, seeing as he had to make his way onto the Steelers via a rookie tryout, so not even as an undrafted free agent. There's no real connections with any coach in the league, considering the fact that he went to Morgan State, which is on the smaller side of things at the FCS level. The only minor connection, where it's about who you know, maybe with the Tennessee Titans, because Tyro Wheatley was the head coach of Morgan State in 2021 when Graham played there. Wheatley then left Morgan State to join the Broncos staff in 2022. The offensive coordinator on the Broncos that year was Justin Outen. Now he's the running backs coach on the Titans last year. He's still on the staff this year as the tight ends coach. He's not the running backs coach anymore, but he was the running backs coach last year in the run game corner. So maybe by that minor connection, you might be able to latch on there just based on who you know, but he might be one of those guys that has to try and catch on in spring football and hope for the best and impress that way. But I want to talk about what this means for the Steelers and their 90-man roster, because this is a bit of an interesting move because it leaves the Steelers with just 5 backs on the 90-man roster. You have Najee Harris, obviously he's safe. You have Jaylen Warren, obviously he's safe. They signed Cordarrelle Patterson this offseason from the Atlanta Falcons. He is safe. You have Aaron Shamplin, who was a reserve futures contract. He is in jeopardy. And Jack Coletto at fullback. So you got 5 guys on the 90-man roster right now at running back / fullback. And that is pretty thin, knowing how the Steelers usually operate. Last year, they had 7 running backs / fullbacks on the 90-man roster. You had Monty Pottenbaum, you had Alfonzo Graham, you had Darius Higgins, you had Najee Harris, Jason Huntley, Anthony McFarland Jr., and Jaylen Warren. In 2022, you also had 90-man roster, 7 running backs / fullbacks. Derek Watt, Najee Harris, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, Jaylen Warren, Master Teague, and Mateo Durant. In 2021, same thing. 7 running backs / fullbacks on the roster. Najee Harris, Benny Snell, Jaden Samuels, Anthony McFarland, Kalen Ballage, Trey Edmonds, and Derek Watt. And again, right now, as I said, they only have 5 guys. So you figure the trend with Mike Tomlin and his staff seems to be 7. So you figure 2 more running backs are going to have to make this roster going into camp based on how they do it. Now, some teams do keep 5. Some teams have 5 or 6 running backs, and that's totally fine. But the Steelers seem to have 7. They usually trend on the higher side of things. They carry 9 in 2020 and 8 in 2019. The last 3 years, though, based on that, it seems to be 7. Now, when it comes to the 53-man roster, they carry 3 guys last year. They carry Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, and Anthony McFarland. They carry 3 guys in 2022 with Watt at fullback, and the 3 running backs were Harris, Warren, and Snell. Regardless of if they carry a fullback or not, it's not at the expense of a 4th running back. They usually only keep 3 regardless. So they might be thinking, okay, well, what undrafted free agent is going to possibly want to come to Pittsburgh, considering the fact that they only keep 3 running backs over the past few years, and you got the 3 running backs pretty locked up with Patterson, Harris, and Warren. Well, Arthur Smith is the new offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh after being the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Last year, the Falcons kept 4 running backs on the roster, so if he has a say in this, maybe the Steelers keep 4 running backs and there is room for an undrafted free agent that seemed like it could have gone to Alfonzo Graham. He might have been the favorite in the clubhouse, probably at the very least over Aaron Champlin, but maybe now an undrafted free agent could sneak into that number 4 spot and get on the practice squad or maybe even on the 53-man roster. So you need to sign 2 undrafted free agents if you need to get to the 7 running back / fullback criteria, since you're only at 5 right now. Now, it's an interesting situation for a running back as an undrafted free agent in Pittsburgh, because on the one hand, the odds are stacked against you compared to other teams because, like I said, based on history, the Steelers only keep 3 running backs on the 53. On the other hand, like I said as well, Arthur Smith is the new offensive coordinator, and the Falcons kept 4 running backs on the 53-man roster last year. So if he has a say in this, and the Steelers don't draft a running back, and I highly doubt they're drafting a running back, it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. It seems like a waste of a roster spot based on history with roster construction, especially because I don't know where he would fit, because Najee Harris, Jalen Warren are going to get the bulk of their carries, and then Cordell Patterson's going to get a few carries here and there. So I don't know where a running back would necessarily fit. You want the running back maybe in 2025 when you let Najee Harris go, potentially, because this is the final year of his contract, unless they pick up the 50-year option, which I don't think they will. But I don't see him drafting a running back this year. But like I said, on the other hand, if the Steelers keep 4 running backs and they don't draft a running back, you've got an incredible chance to make it, especially because, yes, Cordell Patterson is listed as a running back, but I'm not sure how often he's going to be used as a running back, since his main duty is kickoff returns and special teams. He didn't really have a whole lot of wear and tear last year, and he's in his mid-30s, but he didn't have a lot of wear and tear because kickoffs were a sham last year. 22% of kickoffs got returns. Didn't really get a whole lot of chance to return the ball. This year, though, with the new rule changes, kickoffs are going to be returned, so that means more reps for Patterson on special teams, more time that he's practicing with the special teams unit and not necessarily the offense, and that means fewer carries for him, which means a potential 3rd running back could slide into the mix that is not on the roster. And again, I don't think the Steelers should draft a running back necessarily, but based on Alfonzo Graham getting cut, they need 2 more running backs to meet their quota that they've had the past few seasons. It is a very interesting situation in Pittsburgh in terms of how they're going to fill up the 90-man roster. I don't think Aaron Champlin makes the roster. Reserve futures guys usually don't make it. So you're going to have 2 undrafted free agents duking it out for the final spot. Potentially 1, but I think it's going to be 2 just based on the fact that they keep 7 on the 90-man roster, and that seems to be the trend that they've had for quite some time. So Alfonzo Graham, no longer on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think he's going to sign with any NFL team. If it's not the Titans, based on that very, very minor connection, based on who you know, I think it's going to be spring football or Canadian football, just because there were no teams interested in him last year. He tore his labrum, so he's coming off the injury. So it's not going to happen, it seems like. But undrafted free agents for Pittsburgh, it could be a very interesting situation. If they keep 4 running backs, look for an undrafted guy to make the roster. If they only keep 3, we'll see who makes the practice squad and whatnot. But the door is open for at least someone to slide in and get some carries and get some reps in training camp and in the preseason, now that Alfonzo Graham is no longer in the picture. I'm a bit surprised they cut Graham now and didn't wait until after the draft. If they do like keeping 7 running backs, you're probably always going to sign 1 undrafted running back in free agency. Every team usually signs 1 at the very least, but signing 2 might be a bit of a stretch. So why they cut Graham, they must not have liked the progress in the torn labrum. Maybe Arthur Smith didn't necessarily like what he saw out of Graham when he watched the footage of him in college, because again, he was not there last year. Matt Canada was the offensive coordinator, but he had a say in potentially getting Graham. I could see the Steelers potentially doing 1 undrafted free agent and then 1 guy on a rookie tryout, see if you can find someone like an Alfonzo Graham, but we'll see what happens with Pittsburgh on the roster in 2024 with the NFL draft coming up in 3 weeks and with the 90-man roster about to be finalized for the most part in the coming months. But what are your thoughts on this move? What are your thoughts on Alfonzo Graham getting cut by the Pittsburgh Steelers? Do you think he will sign with an NFL team? Do you think he's going to have to go to spring football to potentially make it in the NFL again? And how many running backs do you think the Steelers keep? What do you think the depth chart looks like for Pittsburgh at the running back spot? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And that's going to do it for this episode of JJ9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, Jaguar9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is Jaguar9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.